Hi, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
It's Joe and Abbey. We're talking about human evolution today. We're going to talk about human evolution from the past, like super far in the past, and evolving into the human beings that we are in the present. You know, advanced civilization in the present day world is the most advanced we've ever been in history. And how old really is the human race, and where are we going in time? So these are kind of what we're wanting to explore today. So
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things that all throughout history, things have changed. Like they're saying we're in global warming and we're creating like a heating of the earth that's unprecedented. Well, at one time, the whole world used to be tropical. And then at one time, the whole world was one solid ice, like one big ice cube, miles thick of ice all over the world. Then there's times where ice ages are only covered part of the world. And like levels of the sea rose and fell. So it's like, this is something that always happens. And I think more than anything is when you look at the human beings in general, there's a lot of people that will do whatever they can to prevent the truth from coming out because what they said is right, even though they're wrong or they're proven wrong. They have to do whatever they can to stay right. And those people are the problem and us evolving into something legitimate and good because these people can't let go of something. I find it very hard to believe that if I was an archaeologist and scientist and somebody told me something extraordinary that changed the whole foundation of what I believed was to be true, I would be fascinated about that. I'd be like, that's amazing. So you're telling me this? It's like one example, I think, is to say is that we're the most advanced we've ever been. Well, how do you look at that? Scientifically, we have computers and all this other stuff. But what happens if there was other ways of being advanced in society and civilizations? We know there's massive constructions that happened, like say 4,000 years ago. But there's actually a lot of stuff that came forward that challenges that theory that it was even older. And we know there was almost been proven that there was worldwide catastrophic events, especially around the last ice age. At the beginning of the ice age, about 25,000 years ago, but as the ices basically started to retreat, there was possibilities that there was actually other things that happened to speed up that process, which created massive flooding worldwide. So is that true? The question is, why wouldn't you look at it? If you look at all the mythologies all across the whole world, all the histories, we just should not ignore all these people and saying that all these stories were based on false truths. We should be looking at everything as possibly true and doing whatever we can to get to the truth instead of saying that my way's the highway, you can go to hell if you come up with something new. And this is happening all over the world, though. It's happening with climate change. It's happening with science. It's happening with history. If you're a historian, you should be open to possibilities that you're wrong. But it's the opposite. People will fight tooth and nail to prove that they're right, even though amazing evidence has been brought forward that is contrary to what you believe in. And I think this is a problem with the human race. We should be open to the ideas that there was civilizations prior to this that were really advanced, and we weren't hunter-gatherers for 100,000 years. It's like, I find it hard to believe that our minds are the same, but all we did is walk around the earth for hundreds of thousands of years, and then all of a sudden we decided to start building big monuments out of the blue. It just doesn't make any sense. And to say that we're the only advanced civilization that ever lived on Earth is ludicrous to me.
So you said a lot of different things here, Joe, because we're wanting to do some journeys in exploring representations of human consciousness or human expressions in different times in history. But I think one of the biggest challenges and where we're at in the present day, and I think there's a lot here. I think there's a lot building up here when it comes to there are leagues of us who desperately want to expand the mind and expand the senses and expand the viewpoints and expand science, expand archaeology, expand what we're saying. Because if the human race is only 5,000 years old or whatever, because that's as far back as we can identify these structures on our planet, is really only, it's like, it's, so you're telling me the wheel was invented like 5,000 years ago? Are you serious? And where did the human race come from? Like, I really feel like there needs to be so much more voice and so much more beauty to the voice and the joy and the excitement and the adventure of the discovery of our ancestors. The discovery of what we were doing, what we as a people were doing, what we were thinking, what we were saying, what we were building, and to actually be in awe of us across time. Instead of seeing the human race as we're idiots that slowly but surely found the wheel, and then slowly but surely we came from tents, and then we built some houses, and then we built some castles, and then we built some, and it's like, and we started out like babies few thousand years ago, and then slowly but surely became these superhumans that we are today, where we're neglecting each other and we're creating narratives and nobody can really express their feelings unless it's safe, and we need safe rooms, and now we need to have litter boxes for our preschoolers in case they have a cat gender identity or something. I'm talking here about what are we evolving into if we aren't free and limitless in how we are intrigued by our history and where we've come from, the work of our own hands, our ancestors' hands, saying, wow, this is amazing. We were doing this 10,000 years ago. Oh my gosh, we're finding stuff in the ocean, or we're finding stuff underground. And I find that there's this ego situation going on here where we don't want to, the ego could be related to Christianity, and, it's like the human race and the Bible, and it could be, we need to make sure that history aligns with Christianity so that we can continue to follow the religion. And when we need to really break down the old structures and the old ways of thinking, get the ego out of it and say, this is the best we could understand at the time. This is what we were safe with understanding and evaluating things. But we're going to go the extra mile. We're going to go above and beyond, and we're going to see things in a fantastic, exciting new way. Like this life for humanity should be an adventure. It should be fun. It should be full of love. It should feel connected. It should be valuing each other all across the world, in awe of one another and each other's ancestors. There's so much room to be excited to be alive and not feel like being alive is about as enjoyable as chewing on cardboard, because that's what this feels like. You know what I mean?
I use a lot of things too. She gets pretty excited too at times.
Joe gets excited, and then I get excited.
I'm pretty tired right now, but overall, I think how many of us are not tired?
In general, like as a soul.
Yes. And one of the things that I find interesting is that back in time, people worked with stone. They say, they had no other ways of building things. But work with stone for a reason. They worked with stone because it lasted. It also was part of the environment. And where did they get this information from? And there's a lot of theories around that. But why is it so hard to believe that there was a civilization prior to the Ice Age that we copied in order to continue on to become, like with the Egyptian pyramids and all this other stuff throughout the world? There's pyramids all over the world. The idea came from somewhere. Now, what is so hard to believe that there was something prior to that?
I know. I know what you mean.
Oh, man.
Are you okay?
I don't know. I'll survive.
So, why don't I do a journey? I was going to journey into Atlantis.
Why don't you do that first, then?
Yeah, I'm going to do that. And so I'll close my eyes. I was kind of trying to get a feel for, and I don't feel like Atlantis is as old as we could go. Atlantis is old, but there's so much older we could go. And where is the beginning? Like, what truly is the beginning of our human race? If the beginning was an alien inspiration, would the ego of our scientific community ever get out of the way of that being a possibility? Like, couldn't we use that as an idea? Couldn't we build upon that idea, explore it? And couldn't it be like, can't we get away from it's got to be this way and only this way? Or couldn't we be like, what about this? And we could explore all these ideas in order to grow, a plethora of options. It could be this. It could be this. The reason why we think it's this is all these things. The reason why we think it could be this is all these things. Could be this. Could be that. We don't really know. But it's better to just open the door to so much more, so that we can open our minds, open our imaginations, and feel like free spirits with this. So Atlantis, I was kind of feeling out which time in Atlantis. Obviously if I'm going to Atlantis, I'm going to state that Atlantis, I feel that Atlantis was a real place. I feel a relationship with Atlantis. So somebody could say, well, you can't really prove Atlantis ever really existed. And it's like, okay, so I'm going to use my intuition. I'll just use my intuition, and then we're going to see where that takes me. So intuition, how can we base anything on intuition? Where are the facts coming from here? So I'm going into the energy of my intuition, or my relationship with the consciousness or the idea of Atlantis, which has been presented. I believe there's something along the lines of like Plato and ancestors and documenting this island, something like this, that was highly advanced, that went into the ocean. So there is some reference to it in history. But I'm going to go to Atlantis, chill out. I kind of wanted to look at the catastrophe that caused Atlantis to go into the ocean. So I was kind of undecided as to what time in Atlantis. I'm going to go to the time of Atlantis just before the catastrophe, as well as the time of the catastrophe. Because there is no Atlantis today that we see or witness. And since we can't see it, it must not have ever happened, right? Because it couldn't possibly be real that there was some landmass that existed and then just suddenly didn't exist. Because the Earth goes through extraordinary changes all the time. All right. I'm walking through a hallway, and the hallway is actually surprisingly narrow, and it seems to be made out of tiny little rocks, but they're all smooth. They're like beads, and the wall is completely made out of like millions of these little beads, and they're a tannish color, and there's like a glossiness to the way that they look. And this tunnel isn't straight. This hallway is not straight. I feel like it's more of a tunnel than a hallway. Because I feel like I have to curve a little bit. Like I'm curving in, and I'm curving here, and then I'm curving. And so I'm kind of following this curvature, and I'm entering into a room. And the room is also the same kind of tannish brown color. It's like a medium brown that's got some more of the orangish hues in it, but it's more on the brown side. And it's pretty looking. It's got a gloss to it, and it's an interesting texture. I feel like there's something of the representation of a snake. And that representation of the snake actually makes me feel alive. It does not make me feel fearful. It doesn't make me feel weak. It makes me feel strong, and it makes me feel spiritual. It makes me feel like my soul is very, very strong in and of itself. And my soul energy comes before even my physical form. I feel like I am more my soul than I am my body, even if I am my body. And so when I reach this room, which is a rounded room, and there's only one way to get into it, is this sort of just like curvy tunnel. It's quite narrow. And I go into this room, and there seems to be a conversation. And I'm not afraid of anything. This conversation is about, okay, what is the best way I would describe this? It seems to me that there's awareness that there's an impending event, and what would be the decision of how we're going to handle the impending event. And because I don't feel any sense of fear or I need to run away from the event, I feel actually strong and at peace with the event, believe it or not. However, it's not about me, it's about everybody involved. And that's why this conversation is so important, because there's an awareness. There is a psychic or intuitive or spiritual. There's perhaps a scientific awareness. There seems to be an awareness that some kind of impending event is coming. And it's coming, like it's known that it's going to be really big. It's going to be a big event that is going to impact every single person in Atlantis. And this is happening in this room, just me and another person, and we're both women. We don't necessarily speak with our voices because our souls are in communication. And when our souls are in communication, there's so much more dimension to the communication than just the voice. Because the soul can create like total dimensional realities and time. It can create in exchanges. Imagine if a language could become a dimension, and it could be a whole house of information in a single second. Like all the details, all the rooms, all the ideas, the ones from the first floor, the second floor, the third floor, the viewpoints outside this window versus that window. And we're talking about emotions, we're talking about memory, we're talking about ideas, we're talking about the uncertainty, we're talking about everything in a single moment of exchange. From one soul to another soul to another soul. Like imagine playing ping pong, and it's like this diverse energetic exchange between one Atlantean and another Atlantean. There's so much more accomplished in a very short period of time on these kind of exchanges, because you can't hide anything. You can't you can't pretend to be happy when you're not on the inside. There's no hiding here. And what's interesting is, as I say that, I'm being shown that we're in this room together, and this is not being presented to the outside. It's being discussed inside, even inside a closed space. And so this information doesn't seem like it's presented to everybody. It is only known by a few. And those few were going to have to make a decision that was going to impact everybody on the island, everybody in Atlantis, or this landmass, however you want to call it. The experience that I have is that I choose to stay with Atlantis, and I define Atlantis as my mother home, and that I will be with my mother in her time of death. And that it feels complete. I feel completely whole. I don't feel fearful or afraid at all. But I do seem to be aware of future aspects of myself, because this person I'm talking to is leaving now, and something about this room presents projections of information about other times in human future, human history. We're not called human beings at this time for some reason. I experience the word human is quite odd. It's actually degrading of us. We shouldn't call ourselves human, because it comes from, I guess, I'm thinking the word Homo sapien. It's too associated with an animal. But we actually are more, believe it or not, it's oddly enough, what is being expressed here is that we shouldn't associate ourselves with animals. We are not of animals. I mean, she's very specific. She's even talking to me, and I'm in the future. She's telling me this directly. This part of myself standing here in Atlantis, choosing to go be a part of this event and be at peace with it. There's no fear in her at all, but she's telling me that do not call yourself a human being, like straight up. Like you're not an animal. You're not of animals. That was wrong. That was wrong. I mean, she's straight up saying that is like a cuss word. To call herself humans is like a cuss word. It's violating. I mean, I feel that I feel that sensation. I feel like I'm full of filth and dirt and disgustingness, and that's what she's expressing to me, is that's violating. She keeps saying it. And I said, well, what do I call myself then? She says that you will only understand that when you stop calling yourself a human. I said, well, what about the word humanity? I mean, there's something about a generosity. There's something about that word and what it is giving back, right? Humanity is like... it's not a filthy idea. It's an idea of generosity or caring, some virtue. She doesn't care where the word comes from. She doesn't care where humanity and human. She's just like, that's not what this is about. Okay. She says that that I was wanting to make a link with my own ancestors, therefore link with aspects of myself. We're all aspects of her. We're all aspects of everyone from Atlantis to, China to, everywhere in the whole entire world. Like, we're aspects of each other here. We're all part of each other. This, me going to her, is like us. Me going to us in the past as a single individual. Okay, she's telling me something, but it's complete. I'm not sure what it is yet. It's just complete silence right now, but she's expressing information in the silence. For one, she says, she's showing me her relationship with her land. She's showing me her relationship with her body. She's showing me her relationship with her spirit. She's showing me her relationship with her life. And then she is showing me myself, and what is my relationship with my land and my body and my spirit, and what is my relationship with myself. But it's not just myself. It's something more than this. Because what she is referencing is how strong are we in who or what we are. Almost like the greatest catastrophe was not the end of Atlantis, but the forgetfulness of what we are, and that when we become lost in that hallway, it's like a straight hallway suddenly is transformed into a rat maze, and it never was a rat maze. It was never confusing. None of this was ever confusing before. It was a straight line. But then once the line became curvy, we started to feel a little bit more complicated, a little bit more lost in our self, in our representation. She's showing me that our society is only as strong as it is, as its people are strong. And so a thriving community or an evolved community it's only as evolved as the people of that community are strong in and of themselves and are taught how to be strong in themselves. So there's no fear of death. There's only an understanding of the life cycle and how you participate in that life cycle. But you're a seed in that life cycle. You are an important part of the garden of that life cycle. And how strong are you in yourself? A society is only as strong as its people are empowered to be as strong as their true self. I asked her if she feels that it was appropriate to have this conversation about this catastrophe upcoming. Was it appropriate to just do it in this room without other people knowing? Did that make it a strong, was that the strongest decision? She says that she can't deny that she has endured conflicts in her own, she hasn't always been certain. She says that sometimes her soul still remains wondering if there could have been another type of announcement. Seems like it wasn't loudly announced to people what was coming, but it was allowing people to live their life until the end. And there were many, it seems like, ceremonies. I see ceremonies of people behind closed doors, but they're quite beautiful. Souls with calling to work with energy, to souls with calling to work in the garden, souls with calling to build the structure, souls with calling to do spiritual work, souls with calling to do medicines. Like, it seems like people were aligned with their soul's calling to build that society, because their society was to empower the people. That is what makes the strongest society, but it wasn't always certain. Because what was certain was that it was all going to come to an end. And how would we work through that end? That's why she just chose to be at peace with it, but she's still not exactly at peace with it in her soul. She feels in a way responsible for the death of many, but she does feel that she had to acknowledge she was strong in her stance and at peace with her choice, even though afterwards she started to be uncertain about that. And she can still see future parts of herself and the future of humanity, and it seems to me that's why I keep coming back to Earth, to reconcile some of these things of the past. And that's so literally what I'm being shown there. I mean, I have like a bajillion things I want to explore about this, but one thing at a time. Joseph? Or do you...
That was cool.
That was cool.
It was interesting to listen to. Yeah. My voice isn't the greatest today, I noticed. So let me, in that note, I want to just go right into a journey into civilizations prior to, like, I guess to me, what we know as modern day history. I want to know what's before that in the human race. Then I guess the last advanced civilization prior to a cataclysm that happened. We already know there was a cataclysm that happened. And one of the things I find interesting is if you look at history, like for a good example is there's places in Turkey that were buried in sand and all throughout dirt, things that just disappeared. And it only took thousands of years for that to happen. Well, what happened if most of the world was covered with water, with ice? What would have happened to things that were built out of stone? What would have happened to civilizations? They would have been buried, gone. Things were put under the ocean, like the ocean levels rose, like unbelievable amount. So I think you look at that and people go, well, where's the proof? The proof is that it's buried in time. Like, maybe there is some advanced civilizations that, for instance, could be still there, like in Antarctica, for instance. We don't know. But we know that the ice in North America has melted pretty well all around the globe. The only place that still really hasn't melted was Antarctica. So, but we know over time, things erode, they disappear, they go into the ground, they get buried. So if you look at just a modern day history, how much things disappeared. And when they get covered with water, then they're covered in silt and obviously sea life that eventually just covers everything. So it's really hard to identify what would be considered something that's 20, 30, 40,000 years old. How would we expect it to hold up to time? It would be buried, gone in history. Except we have a lot of stories all throughout the whole world that talk about very interesting things and are very similar. But we look at that as saying, and at that time people didn't know any better. They say that people were stupid. But again, our brains were the same, so people were not stupid. So I think we, as a human race, need to look at our history differently, with more of an open mind, because we might be missing something. It's interesting the story that Abbey just talked about, and you could say it's a story or a real event. It doesn't really matter. The idea of looking at ourselves differently is important. Right now, the human race is broken. Even the best of us are a fraction of what we could be. Because the world tears you down, discriminates against you. And they want it. It's all about control. It's all about manipulation. It's all about greed. So the world right now is full of hatred, greed, especially for people that want to stand up and be whole, be what they truly are meant to be. That is not encouraged in this world. What's encouraged is slavery. What's encouraged is for people to work from 9 to 5 and do exactly what they're told to do. This world isn't about bettering everyone. But what happens if advanced civilizations in the past were? All that knowledge was lost and hidden from us because they don't want people to know what they used to be. Because then people would realize that they are much more than what we're being told we are. And that is the biggest problem in this world right now, is that the world is enslaved by a group of people, by an energy that simply wants to feed, to keep us in the dark, and not really truly get us to understand who and what we are. Because if they did, they'd be open to whatever all this history that is now being told to us, that we were simply just stupid Neanderthal type people. Homo sapiens are from apes, and we evolved into this version of ourselves. We never had advanced civilization in the past. We were never masters of the world. We were never masters of anything. We were just a bunch of filthy animals. And if we don't have the same structure we have now, we'll fall into that filthy animal idealism and just go back to killing each other like we did in the past, and war amongst each other. What happens if that wasn't the truth? What happens if the world actually worked together, shared technology and understanding for thousands and thousands and thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years? We don't know that. But maybe there was a time in history that things got so bad that the world was destroyed. Or what happens if that wasn't necessarily the truth? What happens if that was added in after the fact and simply there was an actual natural disaster that wiped out most people on Earth? What happens if that civilization wasn't bad? It was told that it was bad as a story, just so that to discredit our history of who we really are. What happens if that world was a world that wasn't that bad? I'm just throwing it out there. But when I went back and did journeys before in the past, I've seen many advanced civilizations that come and gone. And there was always evil in the world. Because when we came here to understand what evil was, in a way, we chose to go down a path of learning. So chaos was introduced into the world a very long time ago. But prior to that, what were we? Anyway, it's nice to be able to look at things with an open mind. Because we don't. We lose the possibilities of what the truth is. And the truth really is the most important thing. We all want to know what happened. We don't want to be told fictional stories about lies, manipulation. But that's exactly what's happening now. There's nothing in this world, or very little, is based on the truth. It's all based on lies and manipulation, discredited. And the people that speak the truth are tore down and ripped apart by insecure children.
Or even if you have an idea and it's decided that this is the one and only idea, this is the facts here. Mm-hmm. This is the facts. The human race isn't that old. This is the facts. Or even 5,000 years is a really long time. That's such a tiny, tiny, tiny little pinch of time. And so when this is the facts and it's the only way. This is it. This is the only way. We're not going to be able to grow. We're going to be stuck. Mm-hmm. We're going to be completely stuck because it's decided by some very egotistical, vulnerable, insecure people that somehow got the approval to make those decisions. Now we can never change it. Now it can never be anything different. It's just like how many amazing scientists came up with ideas like, oh, the world is flat, or oh, the world is round, and now they're being ripped apart for their ideas because they're changing the belief systems. They're changing and evolving humanity based upon ideas. But if all the ideas are welcomed and valued, and we actually study based upon all the different ideas, which can be really excellent ideas, and try to disprove them, or try to prove them. I mean, I think you'd want to come up with an idea and then try to prove it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is all the ways that we could test this idea. This is where we're at with it. This is where we're at. This idea. This is where that just opens the door to so many creative new ways of thinking, and it gives people room to breathe and know that we aren't stuck in our ways. We're actually opening the door to so many different ways of seeing things, thinking, and it's important that we figure this out as a human race, because what are we evolving? Where are we going from here?
How our history should be is based on theories. There should be, this is one theory, this is another theory, this is another theory, and this is another theory. Now we take all parts of that theory and come up with a possible theory that is the truth. Instead, this is a theory, and all these other ones are just discredited as not, or absolutely 100% ridiculous.
Like we definitely know that theory has been disproven because of this, and it's like we're still willing to be open-minded of it, but a lot of the
there is no open-mindedness. That's the whole point, because you have to actually literally be proven 100% wrong before they would even change, and even then they're questioning it. They are slow in accepting that. It's like literally basically saying that Jesus Christ is not real, for instance, and then all of a sudden Jesus Christ appears in front of them, and they're still saying that Jesus Christ isn't real, even though he's right standing in front of you. No, that's not Jesus Christ. That's an imposter. That's this. The idea is that even if you could prove 100% that they were wrong, they still will push it aside and hold on to the lies as long as possible until eventually they're forced to change. That's what the problem is. You should be open to new ideas and theorize and think about it. Have debates on it. And say that we don't know what happened 10,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago. These are some ideas that have been brought forward that have relevance, that make sense. Not just one, but all of them. And through all these, we come up with this idea.
Yeah. The main thing,
but they need to tell you where these ideas possibly came from, and not saying that they're all wrong, and mine is the only one that's right.
I don't know how we get ego out, because if you're clutching or clinging to this is the only way, that's a problem, because if an idea is, it's definitely the truth that, the human race is only this many years old. It's like, there's no other ifs, ands, buts about it. It's like, so all the ways the earth has changed, all the climate changes that have happened, like we can't be open-minded to the human race has been able to endure these changes of the planet. They've been able to endure that the human race is strong, and it is conquered, and it is expanded in extraordinary ways. Like this is just an open-minded conversation. But if you were to slam the book shut and yell in my face that you're absurd, you're overstepping your grounds, this is all we have access to, this is then if this is all we have access to, then this is absolutely all there is, was, and ever will be. There's no other open-minded viewpoints. I don't know. It just feels very, very thin. Feels like a very thin line.
And this is why I think me and Abbey do, and we like to go into journeys. Now, are what they're being said 100% true? That is up to you to decide. But there is different ideas that are being brought forward, and the spirit realm does this all the time. They tell you things that gives you an understanding and an open mind to try to work through it yourself and to come up with what you feel is the truth. Because realistically, it's so important that people work together and try to find the truth. We know that's not happening, and that's why we're not going anywhere. That's why we continue on this cycle of chaos all through history. And to be honest with you, with the way things are going right now, I think there's a good possibility, and we can always hope that that's not going to go down that path. But we might just repeat ourselves again. And we might end up destroying ourselves again. We might end up becoming robots that blah, 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 and go on a whole nother level of learning. It's But one thing I don't see is people coming together. And it's funny, there's so many times people come together in spirituality, and then that person ends up becoming like a cult leader, and then all of a sudden that's discredited. Why is it that when people come together in spirituality, they get lost into following a complete ass? And it's like when you get somebody that's really truly a spiritual person is trying to help the world, they're not taken seriously because of all these other assholes out there that want to control and manipulate the narrative. They want to be in power. The world is meant to work as a group of people, as one mind, one soul, together to better mankind. But that is not what's happening. That's not what's being taught. Being taught is you're the most important thing, yes. However, but you don't destroy other people to get what you want. You're the most important thing to develop yourself, but you should never be above anyone else. Anyway, I'm gonna talk all day, but I want to go into this journey and see what I see prior to, either during the Ice Age or prior to the Ice Age. What was going on during that time frame with advanced civilizations? And what was it they're trying to say? What were they trying to do? What was really something that we could pull into this lifetime, this time frame? I see a world full of ants working, just like ants do, in a big colony. It's literally what I'm seeing is like an ant colony in the world. And some of the ant colonies go deep into the ground, and some of them go deep into the mountains. And some of them start to build above ground. And when they build above ground, they get light in their faces. They feel they can take a deep breath. And then they start to be relaxed. They are leisure, is what you could say. They become, you could say, almost lazy. And the ones under the ground are become like angry with this. How dare they actually live above the ground and become lazy and just basically spend hours just sitting around doing nothing. They need to work all day long, 24 hours a day until they're dead. Basically, this type of thinking. So, but they weren't, the beings above the ground weren't lazy. They were enjoying life. They start to understand that to watch a sunset, to just enjoy gardening. It's like enjoy life. It's not all about working all the time. They did something horrible at the same time. Because these beings, they didn't have a choice, they said. Because the beings underneath the earth were getting so angry, they wanted to come out and kill and destroy all these beings that were above the ground. So they trapped them within the earth. And every time they tried to come out of the earth from the ground, they just, again, closed off another entrance, another entrance, another entrance. And they would build mountains and domes on top of these places to keep them from leaving. Keep them under the ground, under the earth. This is what I'm seeing, and this is what is being said. Because they didn't want them to come to the surface of the world. Because they basically wanted to destroy what they were building here. They built these massive structures to keep them from coming out from the earth itself. The entryways were closed, and these massive structures were placed on top so they couldn't get out. But it's simply, why couldn't they build around it? It wasn't as simple as, the doorways were more complex than that. They only could come out at certain parts. It's almost like they weren't really truly in the earth itself. They were in a slightly offset dimensional space. And there was only certain places they could come to the earth. And they were sealed, locked away inside the earth. And this earth, again, was offset slightly. And over time, it got offset even more. And then it didn't matter anymore because the doorways weren't accessible anymore because the world was more offset than it was originally. So these beings became happy, like they lived a beautiful life. They shared knowledge all throughout the world, and they grew. And they had pools where they would basically, like we would have it was more like a sauna, I guess. They would just sit out and enjoy life. They would read. There was poetry. There was music. There was art. This is this goes on for a very, very, very long time. And the souls within the earth got angry and angry and angrier, became twisted, dark, and would periodically try to burst through. But these beings knew anytime they're spiritually connected, and they would block them every single time. And I'm not saying this society thrived, like it was unbelievable. I mean, it was just very, very, very advanced, in my opinion, because of the way they interacted. But they had a dark side that was trapped within in the earth, and it was never allowed to be set free. But they would travel all over the world and share knowledge with each other, understanding. And then there was something being built, a very large ship that was being built, because something was coming, and they knew it. They were very connected to spirituality, and they refused to allow the people under the ground to leave. So they locked them within the earth. But there was some that stayed behind because they were volunteers to stay behind to keep these gateways closed until a specific time frame passed, because they couldn't allow these beings to come to the earth. The ship leaves, like thousands of ships leave. I mean, like the whole, like you're seeing, like the ships one right after the other leave the planet. And there's I would say probably 90% of the population left. And Earth goes through major changes. And a lot of their whole world is turned inside out. And it's just, so a lot of them head south to warmer areas and meet up with other versions of themselves. And when the Ice Age came, it covered up and moved and scraped the land and destroyed anything that was recognizable. And these beings were still trapped because of all the miles of ice. And this eventually passes, because it's almost like a certain point in time, these portals were closed permanently. And when that happened, there was a massive catastrophic event that took place. It was actually really, really bad that they kept these souls locked away. Never, because they weren't all bad. Eventually, they all became twisted and messed up. And they were trapped within the world in this slightly off center of reality. And now they're permanently trapped. And now that time frame has passed, the people have passed. These beings that were once here almost completely died out. Except for a few that I still see, even to this day. The knowledge is still here on this earth. But these beings, this portal, is now starting to be reopened again onto the earth. And that's what's happening today. At this point in time. But there's no structures. Most of the structures are gone and broken. Which is why there is so much happening, especially in the north. Because there's no portals, there's no blockage of these portals anymore. Interesting. That's what was showing to me. So what do you do with that? It's an interesting theory.
It's interesting because, so would you say that these represented a type of human being? And that some humans were attracted to being on top of the earth, some were attracted to being beneath the earth, just innately, just intuitively, they just felt that calling. Then those that went in the earth kind of developed their own way of being, and those that stayed on top of the earth developed their own way of being, and there became a conflict.
Yes.
And that conflict forced the beings on top of the earth into the ground for a time. It sounded like that until they just closed the ground so those beings couldn't, that conflict was closed off.
Well, there was an inevitable conflict that was going to happen, and they closed off all the ways out of that place.
Yeah.
And kept it closed. And because they were linked, because they were very psychic beings, and they were very intuitive, and it's like they were all one brace at one time, and then they came above, and that changed everything. It became like not that important to work constantly all the time.
Yeah.
Like they were like ants that constantly worked. They wouldn't stop. And then they start to realize that that's not life. There's so much more to that life than that. But these other beings seen this as blasphemy in a way. And we're going to wipe them out. But these other beings chose to lock them away. Never allowing anyone to come out of that place. Because of the fear of being destroyed.
Yeah.
But ultimately, they all paid the price but these beings left. 90% of them left in spaceships.
Yeah.
And it's like that was a really advanced society. And I don't know. But again, so much time went by. A lot of fucking time. Like I'm talking 100,000 years easily went by. Through the time when they first showed me up until they left, there was a very long time that they coexisted, and then they stopped and they locked them into the earth, which created all kinds of problems. And now they're so angry that how dare you trap me within this earth, because it was like they still needed to come to the surface once in a while. It seemed like. But it's almost like when you know you can't have something, it becomes something you have to have. That's kind of what it was like. And because they weren't allowed to do it, it was like absolutely horrifying that they weren't allowed to leave. They basically were even though they lived like that for a long time, barely ever coming to the surface.
Yeah.
Once you're not allowed to come somewhere, it creates a psychological nightmare in a person's mind. It's like you could simply be trapped inside your house or voluntarily have to be stuck inside your house, and then all of a sudden told you can't leave ever. And that, again, creates a prison. And when you think you're in a prison, it creates a huge issue. I don't know. This is what was shown to me, and I think it was... It doesn't necessarily mean it's based on fact, but it's a story that the spirits wanted to share with the planet. And why do you think that is?
Yeah.
Because the society was working themselves to death. And then you have another part of society that thought they knew better and didn't seem to care anything about them. Instead, they just closed them off and decided to live their own life. But at the same time, these other people wanted to destroy them. Because they wanted to destroy them, they said, nope, I'm not going to allow you to destroy me. I'm going to trap you within the earth, and then I'll never have to worry about it again. Until there was events that were unchangeable within the earth that forced them to leave. Except there was still lots of them that stayed. And ultimately, only a few still remain. So there is some that are still on this earth. This is what they're being said to me, that know the real history of the world. And know that these beings are going to come and they're going to be angry. And it's going to create all kinds of problems. And they know of ways to destroy the earth on the surface. Anyway, it's interesting.
I still want to do more journeys, to be honest. I want to go look into that in my own way. I want to look at the few, like, what is, I don't know, 100 years from now look like? You know, what does, I don't know, like...
Why don't you stop the video here and we can start another one?
Okay, I like that idea.
Anyway.
I hope you guys enjoyed this message. It was really fun to do, and I think it's a good topic.
I think it always gives you something to think about. And the spirits always, they're very metaphorical in the way they speak and the way they share messages. And it's made to get us to think outside the box, to new ideas. Is it real or is it not real? Don't always be so focused on what you think the facts are, because the facts are written and told to you by individuals that might be wrong or might not be wrong, or only know half-truths or not half-truths. Do we really know our true history? No. Except unless you live through it. And if there is beings that are still here and they know and have a real history, then that's something we as a human race should demand to be brought forward. But would our leaders give us that information even if they knew it?
Yeah.
And the answer is no. And that in itself is the problem.
And the answer is no, because they aren't doing that at this time.
Exactly.
They haven't been doing that.
And
that's is that true? That they haven't been doing that? Because we're actually identifying ourselves as questioning the information that is being presented to us. Is not is there something missing? We're picking up on something is missing here.
Yeah.
Alien beings aren't real? Seriously? Our human history, like there's major I just feel like blanks. And that might just be an intuition. Then maybe my intuition is just a la la land thing, and I need to get back with the program here.
Yeah.
But there is something majorly lacking when it comes to what we have access to. And we have a right to have access to it because we're all in this thing together. There's nobody above or beneath. We are all working through this thing together. And what empowers and strengthens us is when we work together, when we have access to information, it's not being hidden. Or it just conveniently is hard to get. You guys ever try to look something up on Google and it's one of those topics. It's a vulnerable topic, but you're trying to find a different side of the story, but you won't be able to find that story. You're only being given what you need to know about, and many different versions of what you need to know about, but you can't really find a version that is associated with, what feels like an honest other side of the story. Maybe on page 59 or something of Google. It just feels like it's harder and harder to find information that should be definitely out there. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well,
everyone.
thank you guys for watching. I hope you're all having a great day. If you want to check out a session with me, you can do so by visiting my website at abbeynormalswisdomquest.com. You can find Joseph.
I'm on rostawakening.com. So, and my Yukon Northern Lights page is at Joseph Bradley Auroras and Yukon Skies. Take care, everyone.
All right. Bye for now.